enjoy and love trees, so I kind of just wanted to like feature some of the trees of Allen Centennial and like their historical backgrounds. Some of them have like really interesting histories, or some trees that I just really enjoy in the garden. So our first tree today is going to be the larch. So we're just going to walk a few steps that way. Alright, so I'm not sure how many of you know the history of the larch in the garden. Do you know any of this? Yeah, I can give it like a kind of a brief crash course on it then. So this is definitely one of like the garden's most like featured trees. The larch, also like the scientific name is the larix. The history is it was from Door County, and it was actually noted for its really interesting like branch structure. So instead of just growing like vertically straight up like most larches do, it has a lot of horizontal branches that are like low-lying, and they create this really beautiful, almost like bonsai-ish design. So it was given to the dean as a gift because of its unique growth pattern, and it was given to Dean Henry, who was one of the earlier agricultural deans. And actually I think like, almost like halfway through its lifetime, there was a really big freak snowstorm in April, and because it's a deciduous tree and a lot of its like leaves had already branched out, the tree got really heavy at the top, so it ended up like snapping in half. So they weren't really sure if the tree was going to survive or not, but it ended up surviving and doing really well. And then some of the wood from the top half of the tree was used to make the bench in the D.C. Smith greenhouse. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the D.C. Smith greenhouse, but they have a beautiful bench, and it was made from this larch tree. The larch trees are also often used to make yachts because they have such high quality wood. They are one of the strongest among softwoods. So it's a deciduous conifer and originates in the mountainous regions of Central Europe. It's also known as a lure for wild birds. So a lot of the seeds of its small cones are a good food resource for crossbills, chickadees, pine siskins, nuthatches, and grosbeaks. It also attracts a lot of insects, which lure insectivorous birds like wrens, woodpeckers, warblers, swallows, and kinglets. The leaves are needle-like, but they're actually really, really soft if you've ever held them or wanted to hold them. And in autumn, they turn a really beautiful yellow color, and then they drop off for winter. The larch is extremely cold tolerant, and it's able to survive winter temperatures down to -50 degrees Celsius, so it does really well here, and in northern areas of Wisconsin too. But it only grows in well-drained soils, and it's not very shade tolerant, and it likes zones 2 to 7. So this is the linden tree. They're pretty common around Madison. You can see them in a lot of spots. Earlier in the year, they were dropping a lot of their like seeds and fruits, and they were just like everywhere. But the scientific name is Tilia cordata. It's also commonly called the lime tree in the UK. The origin of the names are actually the same, but as they like branched out and kind of emerged and matured, I guess, we took on the linden, and then the UK and Ireland took on lime for the common name. It occurs in Europe and eastern North America, but the greatest species diversity of Tilia is actually found in Asia. It's a hermaphroditic tree, which means it has both male and female parts in its flowers, and then the flowers produce these like tiny pea-like fruits over here. And these fruits are commonly, or they have this like ribbon-like bract attached to them. And the apparent purpose of the ribbon-like bract is to launch the ripened seed clusters a little bit farther away from the parent tree. So that's why it has these like secondary, almost like look like leaves, but they don't really have that same purpose. So Tilia are notoriously difficult to propagate from seed unless collected fresh from fall. If they're allowed to dry at all, the seeds go into a deep dormancy, and they take about 18 months to germinate. Also on this tree you can find a lot of aphids and ants normally. So Tilia has really nice sap basically, and the aphids like to come eat it. And then once the aphids eat it, they produce another like sweet substance that is food for ants. So the ants will commonly go and farm the aphids on the tree. And that's also seen in like a lot of trees, like cherry trees have that a lot, or just trees that have like really yummy sap. So it prefers full or partial sun. It's hardy up to -30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it likes zones 4 to 8. Alright, so this is our Seven Suns tree. The scientific name is Heptacodium. It's a tree that's endemic and native to China. And the name of it is actually a direct translation of the Chinese name, which is Qizihua. So qi means 7, zi is like sun or familiar member, and hua is flower. The name is actually a little bit misleading because it only produces 6 flowers. And then what people thought was the 7th flower is actually just like an inflorescent axis, which is used, like it's a little bud on the tree that's used to produce more flowers. But you can see here there's like 2 rows of like, I don't know, stems that produce like 3 flower clusters on each. So there's only 6 flowers, but it's called the 7 Suns tree or 7 Suns flower tree. It was considered rare when discovered in 1907 by the British in China, and it's still considered rare. It's under 2nd class national protection. Even though it's like considered pretty rare, it's a very hardy tree, so it's tolerant of temperatures as low as like negative 31 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's very shade tolerant. It's a deciduous tree with really papery thin bark. You can see in there the bark kind of just like strips off in sheets. This is really interesting, and it produces beautiful white blooms in the spring that are really fragrant and attract butterflies and bees. And then when the flowers have fallen, eventually it'll produce these deep red lobes that'll persist into November. Alright, so this is our katsura tree. The scientific name is Cercidophyllum. It grows for about 60 years, and ours is around 30 years old, so it's about half its life, but it's at its about full height. It's native to Japan and China, and it's one of the largest hardwoods in Asia. It's normally grown as an ornamental tree for its delicate heart-shaped leaves, and in the autumn it creates the leaves turn a beautiful like bright orange, pink, yellow color, and they create this scent that's like a burnt sugar or cotton candy. So you should come back and visit in the fall and give it a sniff. It's very sensitive to drought, and it needs deep, permanently moist soil. And yeah, so the katsura wood is often used to make board games like Go, and it likes full sun, partial shade, hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and zones 4 to 8. Alright, so this is our ash tree, and I know ash trees are more common, but I just wanted to highlight it because there are like so few ashes around anymore, and we have a beautiful one, so I thought I would share some cool interesting facts about it. So the scientific name is Fraxinus, and the ash tree has a ton of ecological importance. So it helps attract a lot of like birds and insects, and also frogs. So first in the birds, it attracts a lot of birds with the shelter, insects, and seeds that it kind of attracts or provides. So some of the birds you'll see around an ash tree are woodpeckers, blue jays, cuckoos, northern flickers, cardinals, purple finches, nuthatches, wild turkeys, and wild ducks. And then it's also a very critical food source for Northern American frogs because the tadpoles feed on the fallen leaves of the ash trees in ponds. And one of the reasons why like the ash tree is so special for this is because their leaves have less amounts of tannins, which makes them a better food source for the frogs. But the lack of tannins also reduces their resistance to the emerald ash borer. I guess a reason why it's called the ash tree is because the tree bark is gray, but then the timber turns white after processing, so it's called like the ash or white ash tree. It has been on the list, the IUCN Red List of endangered trees since 2018 due to the emerald ash borer. So I guess I'll talk a bit about the emerald ash borer because it's a pretty important bug right now. So the emerald ash borer was accidentally introduced to North America from Eastern Asia via solid wood packing material in the late 1980s to early 1990s, and since arriving it has killed tens to millions of ash trees in over 22 states in the US. How it kind of kills the tree is the emerald ash borer larvae feed on the phloem of the tree. So like the emerald ash borer lays their larvae within like the bark of the tree, and then the larvae feed in the phloem, and the phloem is what transports nutrients and water up and down the tree. So by like eating away at that, the tree is no longer able to like transport its nutrients as well, and then it just kind of eventually dies. A couple ways to treat for emerald ash borer are like chemically, so we've like chemically treated this tree and it's been doing pretty well. Another like thing that they've been testing out is introducing an Asian wasp, which is its normal, like in Asia it's its predator, but there's been kind of a lot of discourse about that, about introducing yet another foreign invasive insect into like North America in a different climate. But yeah, so it's kind of a sad note to end on, so I'll share a bit about like a cute little story on like the mulberry tree.